and welcome to Healthy Living in Lowell, a production of the Lowell Health Department and its many community partners. My name is Kate Elkins, and I work at the Lowell Health Department. And today I am so fortunate to be joined by Judy Pentademos from Lowell General Hospital Diabetes and Endocrine Center. So Judy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Kate, for inviting me to come down and share information about diabetes with you.
I know, and I'm so excited because we worked together when I worked at Lowell General Hospital, and you helped so much with a lot of our health fairs that we put on for the hospital, so thank you.
Well, Lowell General Hospital has a commitment to the community, and anytime we can get out and do community projects, it helps the community and it helps us as well.
Oh, fantastic, I love it. So, Judy, tell me a little bit about yourself and your role at the Diabetes and Endocrine Center and how you got into the field of diabetes work. Tell me everything.
I don't think the show's long enough for everything, but I actually have been working in the field of diabetes for many years. I was a clinical manager and nurse practitioner at a site in the community outside of the Lowell area. And so I was recruited to come to Lowell General 5 years ago to start a diabetes education center for Lowell General Hospital. So my training is diabetes education is through Joslin, Boston. And so I worked for many years at an outpost of the Joslin, Boston, a satellite. And knowing that the city of Lowell had a need for diabetes education, the challenge struck me to come down and help them to build a center and a strong center, and we have actually accomplished that, and the hospital sees the worth in what we are doing such that they have now placed us at 9 Loon Hill Road in Dracut in a brand new building, and we occupy the whole 3rd floor. So
that's amazing, and that's a relatively new.
We've been there 1 year. September was our 1 year anniversary, September 17th. So my role at the center is I am a nurse practitioner. I have a patient population that I care for, and I'm also the clinical manager. So any policy or new technology that we want to bring on board, I oversee implementing, onboarding the technology as well as educating the staff to use the technology.
Oh my goodness. And how many staff do you have at the center?
We have 6 providers. That's 4 endocrinologists and 2 nurse practitioners. We have 2 nurse educators. We have 2 dietitians. And we have support staff of medical assistants and front office staff that equals an additional 10.
Wow. So it's quite an operation.
It absolutely is quite an operation, and we strive to keep everything state of the art. We are not a diabetes center that just looks at one technology. We do all of the insulin pumps. We do all of the continuous glucose monitor sensors, and we stay current in all of the latest medications and trends, if you will, in diabetes management.
That's amazing that we have that right here in our community. So
it is.
I love it.
It's a great resource.
Now, there was a lot of words you just mentioned that I don't know what they are, and I'm sure our audience as well would like to know. So let's start from the very beginning, the very basics of what is diabetes.
Diabetes is a condition whereby your pancreas is unable to do the job that the pancreas normally would do. So there are different types of diabetes. For example, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disorder. You have experienced a virus or some event, and the pancreas is unable to function and no longer produces any insulin at all.
Okay.
Years ago, they used to call that juvenile diabetes because they used to think you only got that if you were young. And we know that's not true. We know that you can develop type 1 diabetes at any age or stage. Type 2 diabetes, the type of diabetes that actually is 90% of the population of people with diabetes have type 2 diabetes. And that has a much stronger genetic component. So if you had one family member that had type 2 diabetes, statistically, you are 90% likely of developing type 2 diabetes as you age. Those are the people that I think need to be identified early on and put on a prevention course. And then we have the pregnancy diabetes, gestational diabetes, the diabetes that occurs during pregnancy due to hormones of the pregnancy, and all of these are managed and managed well, managed initially with diet and exercise, as well as possibly some medications. But diet and exercise are the mainstay of diabetes management for a lifetime.
Wow. So the 3 different kinds, let me see if I have it right: type 1, type 2, and then gestational, which occurs possibly during a pregnancy.
Yes.
Okay. So how are each of these diagnosed? How would you know that you had type 1 or type 2 diabetes? How does that work?
Type 1 diabetes, an individual usually finds themselves very ill. They feel like they have a flu at first, and as the blood sugar climbs, they are very tired, very thirsty, they're urinating a lot, and they most often become so ill that they have a condition called diabetic ketoacidosis that is a emergency condition, and they land in the hospital, unfortunately, often in the intensive care unit because they are so dehydrated. They need intravenous fluids and they need insulin quickly. Type 2 diabetes, that's a slow and insidious process. That happens over years. Sometimes people have a condition of type 2 diabetes 5 years before it's even identified. And symptoms of type 2 start slower. Fatigue is one of them. Thirst, urinary frequency, low mood, low energy. Sometimes it actually is mistaken for depression. So anybody over the age of 45 should be having an annual evaluation with lab work that is screening for risk factors for diabetes, but also lab tests to identify.
And is that something that normally when we go to our primary care physician and we get our checkup that they do annually, or something we as a patient should ask for?
You know, it usually is done on an annual basis in the labs, but I think that you as an individual should know what those results are. So you're looking for what is a fasting glucose, and a fasting glucose less than 100 is considered normal, and a fasting glucose from 100 to 110 is considered impaired fasting glucose, which actually puts you on the slippery slope to progression to a condition of diabetes.
And is glucose the same as our blood sugar level? Is that
is exactly what glucose is blood sugar.
Okay.
And we use those words interchangeably.
Okay, got it. And so what would if you could just talk briefly about, and you mentioned there's technologies and insulin pumps and medications, what are the treatment processes? What are some of the treatment options for the different types of diabetes?
Well, I'll go back to my my diet and exercise must be the mainstay. So
For all any type of diabetes.
Not even diabetes. None of us are going to age without ill health if we do not subscribe to some form of diet and exercise.
Okay.
Your body needs it needs structure, it needs nutrition, it needs to work. The body loves to work. The more the body works, the more the body wants to work.
Right.
And so diet and exercise have to be part of the program.
Okay.
And you know, people will say to me, oh, but I can't walk, I have arthritis in my knees, or I have my hips. But you can do so much in sitting in a chair. You can challenge yourself physically. That's what I like to call it. I don't like to call it exercise. I like to say, what do you do to challenge yourself physically? Because exercise sounds boring.
That's true. I immediately think of the treadmill and my mind goes to a place where I don't want to do it. But I like challenging yourself to move physically, or that's much better for me.
Yes, because
Makes
there are
my
so
brain
many
think a little different.
ways in your day that you can fit activity into what I call lost moments. You know, if you're waiting for something to heat up in the microwave, you can do a nice fast sidestep.
Yes.
If you read the paper every night, you can read the paper standing up instead of sitting down, because you burn more calories standing than you do sitting. But we need to challenge ourselves.
Yep.
And little tiny baby steps in that direction will get you some pretty good results.
Amazing. And then so insulin has always confused me. My grandfather actually had type 1 diabetes, and I knew he was pricking his finger and maybe injecting insulin, but how does it work? And I know it's so advanced now.
Insulin is the chemical that the pancreas makes, and it's actually a hormone that the pancreas makes and floats through the bloodstream. It is the key to unlock the cell's ability to allow the glucose to go into the cells.
Okay.
The cells need glucose. Every single cell in your body needs glucose. It's the energy of the cell to grow your hair, blink your eyes, beat your heart, digest your food, walk across the floor. The end is energy from all of the cells, and insulin is required. Unfortunately, the body doesn't know that this sugar is trapped in the wrong space. It's trapped in the bloodstream. So the cells are starving, and messages are going to the brain, feed me, feed me, feed me. So people with high blood sugar, sometimes they're hungry all the time.
Right. Okay.
But once the insulin gets either sensitized by some medications or other medications that help the pancreas produce more insulin, or you have insulin injected into the body to do what your own body's insulin can't do, then the system starts to work and the blood sugar starts to come down.
Okay. Wow, you explained that so well. It's not your first time explaining that.
No. But it's a good thing that everybody should know, because my motto is a pancreas would do what a pancreas should if a pancreas could.
Right.
And there's really no shame in the fact that your pancreas can't do what it needs to do, but there are things that we can do to help the pancreas. And so every little bit adds up, and I use that saying all the time.
I love it. I love it. So let's just talk a little bit more about type 2 diabetes, because I know, as you said, that is out of all the people who have diabetes, type 2 is more prevalent. And specifically young people. So what's going on with the surge of younger people having type 2 diabetes?
You know, it's multifaceted, and I don't think anyone has absolutely put their thumb on it, because you'll hear people say, oh, it has nothing to do with television or screen time or whatever. But I think that it's multifaceted because, one, genetic predisposition. So these young kids may have not their mother and father, because their mother and father are younger, but the generations ahead have type 2 diabetes. And so, unfortunately, nobody's thinking about putting a teen or a young adolescent on a type 2 prevention course. And I think that's where we really have to start all kinds of intervention because the progression can happen quickly and it's so preventable. Schools have 20-minute lunch. So what are we teaching our kids along with teaching them reading and writing? We're teaching them to consume a large amount of food in a very short period of time. Instead of slow down, have your lunch, it's hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, get out to recess. If you don't eat, you got to eat and get out to recess, right. Or you got to eat and you got to get to your next class. And so unfortunately, we carry those habits into our life where we consume our food way too quickly. The other thing is, schools and gym time has been cut. We foster and we promote sports and activities, but for many people, that's an unrealistic expectation because either you can't afford it or you can't get to it. And the communities are doing more, though. The city of Lowell has beautiful parks. Young people also is home after school, and perhaps nobody's watching the snacking and the food choices. So that could be an issue as well.
So just how you mentioned the way to treat diabetes is diet and exercise, that's also the way to prevent it, it sounds like. And perhaps our younger people are not as good at that right now as previous.
Well, I think it's a waking up of society too. I know when I raised my children, I never, even knowing that I am likely to develop type 2 diabetes as I age, because I have a huge family history, I really wasn't thinking of putting my kids on a diabetes prevention course. But now when I look at my grandkids, right. And I hear the national statistic that the fastest growing population and the worrisome population is 12-year-olds to 19-year-olds, an increase in a 2-year span of 27% increase in prediabetes in this population. And I know when I went through my training, and I had training in pediatrics, there was no prediabetes ever spoken about.
Right.
In fact, sometimes you were discouraged from talking about weight because there was a belief years ago that if you talk to a teenage child about their weight, that you would make them anorexic. And we know now that is absolutely not true. But then sometimes talking about weight and talking about activity levels is a sensitive matter, and that conversation sometimes is really too hard to start and feel comfortable about.
Yeah. So are you seeing more younger people at your clinic, at the center?
A recent uptick, yes, in adolescents with type 2 diabetes. I get calls all the time from the local school systems, as even from Lawrence, and they have children that are on adult medications, and they want to know, wow, what do I need to look out for? What do I need to know about? Because in the school system, type 1 diabetes is a very small population, and the nurses at school know how to take care of type 1 diabetes, but now type 2 diabetes, when you have children now on adult medications, it's a whole new management profile. So.
Well, Judy, let's take a break here, and we'll talk a little bit more when we come back about preventing diabetes. So stay with us as we come back in a few moments, and we'll dive right back in. Welcome back to Healthy Living in Lowell. I'm Kate Elkins from the Lowell Health Department, and I'm joined by Judy Pentadimos from Lowell General Hospital Diabetes and Endocrine Center. So Judy, thank you. We just I learned all about diabetes a little bit more than what I knew, so thank you. But now we'll dive into prevention and what are some of our local resources. So what should young people do? You talked about a diabetes prevention plan, but what can young people and adults alike do to prevent type 2 diabetes?
I think the very most important thing is to know your risk. And the number one question is, do you have a family member with type 2 diabetes? And if the answer to that is yes, then you should be thinking about putting yourself or your children on a diabetes prevention course. And a diabetes prevention course, as I said before, always includes diet and exercise, healthy living. We're not asking people to spend a lot of money or join a gym or do anything. We're asking people to get out, walk, put one foot in front of the other, and start by, even if all you do is portion control and reduce the amount of calories you take in a day, and make sure that you are getting fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and eating healthy.
And is that something, if I wanted to learn more, because obviously after seeing today's show, I'm going to want to do this right away. Can I ask my physician? Can I look online for a diabetes prevention course? How would I?
Actually, if you go onto the American Diabetes Association webpage, and Google that, they have a wealth of information. Lowell General Hospital website, under the Diabetes and Endocrine Center, we even have a lot of information that you can peruse. We have support groups at the center that are free and open to the public, meeting on the first Wednesday of every month during the day. And that is a resource. I know a lot of the church groups, and the Lowell Y has a diabetes or a healthy eating and healthy living program that they offer from time to time. So, there are things out there. You have to kind of look around and find them, but there's stuff. And to just get back to basics. I tell my patients, if it wasn't a food 100 years ago, it isn't a food today. And so the more you can, eat food in its natural state and stop dressing everything up and frying it and throwing butter on it and cheese whiz and all the things that people do, and that you'll cut calories quite quickly.
I love it. So let's say I've been diagnosed with diabetes or pre-diabetes, and I come into the center. What are going to be some of the programs that are available to me?
Well, patients that come can meet with the nurse educator, and our program is accredited by the American Association of Diabetes Educators, and we subscribe to what they call the AADE 7, or 7 healthy behaviors that will give you or lead to success with diabetes management. And so the educators will work with you on the 7 healthy behaviors, and perhaps you don't even have to work on all 7, because maybe one of them you're already implementing. So they would help you to fit diabetes management into your day with a structured program. Our dietitians would write an individual nutrition prescription based for you. It's not a one-size-fits-all nutrition prescription. They take into account comorbid medical conditions. They take into account daily activity. They take into account cultural requirements or likes and dislikes. I like to, tell people, if you've reached a certain age and you don't eat lima beans, then do you really care what's in a lima bean? No, but you really need to know what's in the food that you eat every day, because that's what you eat every day.
Right.
And and to help you to understand that you can have it all, you just cannot have all of it. Everything
Okay.
portion controlled and appropriate.
And so diabetes is it needs to be managed. It's not a come in to see the physician and go away with the medication and come back next year. It's a management program. So what support, you mentioned support groups available. Could you just go over that again that are available for folks?
Well, yes, the support groups, the people that come, we always have an education component. So something will come up at a group meeting, and the person leading the meeting will make sure that the next meeting addresses that topic.
Okay.
She'll hear an interest. But most of it is the sharing of the people that attend. So the reality is, one person can't experience every single event in management. So you learn from each other. When somebody says, oh, I ate this and this happened, and then someone will say, well, the last time I ate at such and such a restaurant, they had this and I found that helpful so I could stay on my program. You know, there are a lot of tips and things not necessary from the healthcare provider, but learning from each other at a support group.
That's great. Now you also have at Lowell General, you have some events coming up for Diabetes Awareness Month, which is in November, which I totally forgot to mention, but that's why our topic is diabetes for this month. So what are the programs, and if you wouldn't mind sharing the dates for those?
On November 7th at 6 o'clock, Dr. Miguel Ariza is putting on a program of diabetes and thyroid disease, healthy living with a chronic disease. So he's a great speaker and a wealth of information in this field. And this is open to anybody. You don't have to have diabetes to attend this or thyroid disorder, but anybody that has a family member or just a general interest should come on down. On December 4th at 6 o'clock, I'm doing a talk, Diabetes and Heart Disease, what's the connection? Because persons with diabetes have an increased incidence of heart disease, and I think if you know that early on, you are more likely to put yourself on a prevention course of heart disease as well. And in January, on January 9th, Brittany Aramo, our RN CDE educator, is going to do healthy eating with diabetes. So we try to have information every time the For Your Health flyer goes out. We try to participate and have educational programs in that.
And where can people go if they want to find more information about these events or your programs?
They can go to the Lowell General website. If they're looking to have a screening for diabetes, on November 2nd at 10 to 2, we'll be up at the Pheasant Lane Mall doing a health screening for anybody. It's free and open to the public. So if you have a question and just want to know what your risk is for diabetes, I suggest you come on up to the mall.
Oh, that's awesome. That's always a great event. I've been
is.
to that one. I love it. Well, that's all the time that we have today. So, Judy, thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
Oh, it was great to see you too. And folks, we'll see you next month as we dive into more health topics and healthy living in Lowell.